that Congress is currently debating whether to impose a code of ethics on the Supreme Court. And last week, one of your colleagues actually said that Congress cannot do that. And I'm curious, what do you think?
Not giving me a pass in this interview. And, you know, I like the way, you know, it's a little bit stealthy. Start off with Andy Warhol. Okay. I did read that interview. I found it a little bit hard, honestly, because of the way the interview was written, to know what my colleague, I don't want to be like he who shall not be named, was Justice Alito, what question he was answering exactly, just because of the way the thing was written. I'm not quite sure what question he was answering exactly, so I think I'll just put him to the side, but I will try to answer the question, sort of. So, I mean, you know, can Congress regulate aspects of what the Supreme Court does? I think two opposite, or not opposite, but, you know, there are two poles here that seem pretty clear-cut to me. And the first is, of course, Congress can regulate various aspects of what the Supreme Court does. I mean, Congress funds the Supreme Court. Congress historically has made changes to the court's structure and composition. Congress historically has made changes to the court's appellate jurisdiction. And indeed, there's a provision in the Constitution that says something like, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction under regulations that Congress provides, or as, you know, I'm missing the exact words, but it actually talks about Congress having a role in our jurisdiction. It talks about Congress regulating the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And I think, you know, more generally, this is like not surprising. I mean, our whole system is one of checks and balances. And usually when the court talks about that, we're talking about other actors and the way they check and balance each other, or the way we check and balance them, but it just can't be that the court is the only institution that somehow is not subject to any checks and balances from anybody else. I mean, we're not imperial, and we too are a part of a checking and balancing system in various ways. So can Congress do various things to regulate the Supreme Court? I think the answer is yes. Now, that doesn't say what things, and I want to say, on the other hand, can Congress do anything at once? I'm going to say, well, no, it can't do anything at once. You know, if Congress did something that basically, you know, that effectively prevented the court from fulfilling its assigned responsibilities, I mean, that would raise some pretty serious constitutional issues in just the way it does if Congress does something that effectively prevents the executive from fulfilling its assigned responsibilities. So there are limits here, no doubt. And so then there's this question, which is, well, in this sphere of ethical obligations, is this just like a, you know, yes, Congress can do it, or is this something where Congress has approached the limits of its power to affect what the court does? And I guess I would say as to that, now that I've gone on and on, I'm going to tell you, oh, I'm not going to answer that question, but I'm not, because, you know, Congress is considering these right now. Congress is an independent constitutional actor. I think Congress, when it decides whether to pass legislation, ought to, and hopefully, usually does, consider the constitutionality of its own actions. And it's entitled to do that, I think, And, you know, I wouldn't want to jawbone it while it's doing that. And so, and, you know, I guess also I have, like, in the back of my mind some feeling of, like, who knows, something might come before us someday. But mostly I think, look, Congress is doing this. Congress should have, you know, the right to consider for itself what it thinks constitutionally appropriate and otherwise appropriate. And, you know, if it comes out with something, then we'll have a chance to say something about it. But I will say this, that regardless of what Congress does, the court can do stuff, you know? So, I mean, one of the reasons we've never really confronted these, there's not a whole lot of law or precedent in this area of what Congress can do with respect to imposing ethical rules on the court. And the reason is that the court has acted voluntarily to subject itself to various rules. And one of the things that the Chief Justice sent to Congress this past spring was a statement that all 9 of us signed that talked about all the rules that we do follow, that we have decided to follow. And, you know, essentially that we say we'll follow them just like other judges follow them, even though the court is, unlike other judges, a distinct, constitutionally created entity. But, you know, we have undertaken to file financial disclosure reports and to limit the gifts we receive and to limit our outside income and to do a variety of things. And we've also made clear that we are guided by the standard code of conduct that applies to all other federal judges. Now, when we've said that, we have noted that there are certain ways in which we are different from other federal judges. I think that the usual example is that recusal operates a little bit differently, when recusal means that you will not be replaced by anybody. And there may be other differences as well. But you know, we could decide to adopt a code of conduct of our own that either follows or decides in certain instances not to follow the standard code of conduct. And that would remove this question of what can Congress do, or at least, you know, it would put it in a different light if Congress continued to act. And, you know, look, it's not a secret for me to say, and there's been, that, you know, we have been discussing this issue. And it won't be a surprise to know that the 9 of us have a variety of views about this, as about most things. You know, we're 9 free-thinking individuals, and so you know, what the Chief Justice said most recently, and I want actually not to get out in front of the Chief Justice on this issue. But he said most recently, I was there, he was accepting a great award from the ALI, a deserved award, the Henry Friendly Award. And in his acceptance remarks, he talked about this issue, and he said that, you know, he was determined, as we all are determined, to comply with the highest ethical standards, and that we were continuing to engage on the issue of what additional measures we could take to ensure that result. And so we are, and so we will. And you know, this is, it's a hard thing to figure out exactly how we're alike and how we're different from other judges. It's a hard thing to get as much consensus as you can in the way that we like to do. But I hope that we will make some progress in this area of the kind that the Chief Justice talked about, and maybe put the question of of what can Congress do or what can Congress not do, maybe take that out of play.
Thank you.